So, great thanks to my dear friend, Rebecca Bathurst Hunt. She's a kindergarten colleague here in my district, and we do a lot of inquiry work together. And she is the talented artist behind a lot of these sketch notes. And so, part of the question here that I just want to lean into for a few moments it is a question about values. It is a question of what we believe in our role as co-assessors is with students. And this is actually chapter 1 of the book, introducing these values to educators and asking educators to consider embodying these values. If I could be quite frank, these are the things that, if we're going to share the assessment realm of the classroom, these are the things I hope teachers believe in. And in believing in them and holding these values, we are going to begin to implement some strategies to have these values bubble up and become a part of how we interact with students. What are the experiences we are nurturing and cultivating with kiddos so that these values are evident? And I think all of these values, of course, reflect a partnership in assessment, a partnership in learning. So, chapter 1 is framed in, where do these values find a home with you? Is there alignment? Do you believe in what the book is about to propose? So I asked teachers to do a little bit of reflecting, a little bit of a diagnostic, a little bit of a check into their assessment beliefs and assessment practice before we unpack the conceptual framework. I ask students to do check-ins all the time. I ask students to reflect. I ask students to do a diagnostic. I ask students to guide their next steps and inform my support of their next steps. And so very much what I'm asking teachers to do throughout the book, it's a little bit of coaching and modeling as to what it looks like for students. So I know many of you are kind of working your way around these 10 beliefs. Number 6, for example. Oh no, let's go to actually, I'm going to transition. Let's go away from this sketch note and we'll go to another sketch note briefly so we can see that conceptual framework that I was referring to. And now we can get into some of those activities. There we go. So now we're onto the different sketch note. This is that continuum, that conceptual framework that I referred to. Number 1, co-designing and co-constructing with students. What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? Co-designing is an underpinning of the inquiry model. Certainly we plan learning, we have intentions in our learning, but we are facilitating with students a lot. I propose teachers co-design on day 1. The first time you meet students, ask them guiding questions to facilitate talk and have what you hear, have what you notice, have what they share guide our next steps. And we can co-design many things in the inquiry classroom. One thing I propose that we co-design are our assessment tools, are our success criteria, are our rubrics, even those assessment tools that are given to us by our governing bodies, because we all have those. We all have a watcher. Even our assessment tools that we are told you have to use this to assess this. I never just hand those over to students. I never just use those blindly without students being aware of them. I always tuck those aside on the edge of my desk. And through a series of guiding questions, I have students create their own rubrics. And my goal is to have them, through this co-design of the rubric process, get to a similar rubric that I have on my desk, that master rubric. Through these guiding questions, I'm accessing prior knowledge. I'm checking for assessment clarity and expertise and understanding and experience. I'm listening for that assessment language that is a part of that rubric. And then I'm differentiating. As I'm seeing and hearing and noticing certain things, I'm doing things differently. Maybe I sit with particular students and guide them differently than I would sit with other students. In our inquiry practice, these are behaviors of which we do often. Why aren't we doing these with the assessment realm of our practice? If we're listening in our inquiry practice, we need to bring that to, obviously, the assessment realm of our practice as well. Co-designing is step number 1. I don't propose that we all start at step number 1. I think some of us may feel really confident with step number 1, so we want to bounce around this continuum to sharpen our practice. But the way the book is written is kind of 1 through 10. To kind of bookend the conversation really quickly and to segue perhaps to the next conversation, I do believe the most informal or the space in our assessment practice that lacks student voice the most is in our reporting assessment, those standardized report cards. And I do propose that the pinnacle or the continuum kind of loop ends when we can have students co-write and co-design report cards. How do we sit with students and know there's confidence and assessment accuracy and clarity so that we can not just write report cards, comments together, But if you're in a school that grades, that assesses using percentages, students can pick their number with accuracy through a conversation, rich and guiding questions. And it's this continuum that I propose will get us to that space where students can confidently sit and talk about their learning so openly and accurately that we can co-write report cards together. So, I wanted to give you a snapshot of those 10 chapters. This is it. I'm sure you're seeing some assessment language that you're familiar with. Peer and self-assessment is important. When does peer and self-assessment fall short? Peer and self-assessment falls short. And Guy, I've learned this from Guy as well. Peer and self-assessment falls short when students don't have trust in the room, when there's not psychological safety, when they're worried about judgment and ridicule from one another or from their teacher. So how do we remove those barriers to accurate peer and self-assessment? How do we ensure students feel trust and confidence in the room? Well, we look at chapter or step number 6 there. It's through rich relationships and rich connection with our students where we can create trust and openness and vulnerability where peer and self-assessment will then thrive. So yes, there's a chapter about relationship building. It's a fantastic chapter. As we all know, relationship building is very important in our practice. But in this particular context, with regards to assessment, the more we get to know our students, the safer they will be in talking openly about themselves as learners, about self-assessment, and about peer assessment. I hope that helps. I hope that sheds some light on some practical pieces that you were looking for, but also kind of dovetails to what is in the book.